Hello, welcome to With Winning Mind podcast. I'm your host, Troy Basham, along with Lanny Basham, the legend of mental management systems. And we are in a discussion this morning about how do you select an Olympic team. We have had many cases over decades of people who've made the Olympic team. We've had trials ourselves. Obviously, you've been successful with a couple of your trials and medaling in the Olympics. And so the question we were going back and forth is, when do you select the team? Now we're talking about specifically with individual sports, so we're like swimming's going on right now. We're, several weeks from the games happening in Paris. And so we're looking at it from the standpoint of, okay, when would be the best time? Many other sports have already selected their teams. People know they're going to go. People know they're not going to go. And so the question we had was, well, when do you select it? And we have been fortunate to see just about anything and everything, because in our sport, which is international shooting, we have shotgun, rifle, and pistol. We are international rifle shooters that most of y'all know, but rifle, shotgun, and pistol are all under the same umbrella of USA Shooting. And that umbrella, as far as we are responsible, USA Shooting, that is responsible for putting teams together in those three disciplines. But those three disciplines don't all, select the same way. They have different selection process. So we've seen it where it's a year away, it's weeks away, it's a couple months away. So the question is when do you select it? And then after you've selected the team, how do you coach someone to the Olympic Games? So let's turn it over to Lanny and see what your thoughts are, because I think we might have a difference of opinion on when and how you should select it.
I think that the problem with the selection process is that everybody has a different idea about how to select the Olympic team, and it kind of depends on who you are and where you sit in the hierarchy of guys that actually have a chance to make an Olympic team. First of all, everybody needs to understand that this is the one time in a 4-year period when the Olympic selection process becomes a primary product of the national governing body. In other words, you have the international governing body, which is the International Olympic ISSF, and our sport. You have the Olympic team. The International Olympic Association, I guess, decides which sports are going to be in the Olympics and how many athletes are going to be allowed to compete in each sport. And it falls down to the national governing body that determines how they're going to fill those slots that are given by them, and normally there's some kind of quota tryout program, and then it goes down to the country to train their national team. And so it's quite an involved process. So there's a lot of committees in here that get to decide. I mean, how many people have said, what's that doing in the Olympics? There may be somebody watching this that says, I didn't know shooting was in the Olympics. We should take that out and put pickleball in there. Why is shooting in there, or why is skateboarding in there, or why isn't my sport in there? Why isn't this in there? And so you have people that the reason why there's such a variety is that the people are different and they have different motivations and so forth. So what we're going to share with you today is we don't probably know the best way to do something, but we have some experience in different kinds of tryout procedures. So in my case, the way that it was decided, everything that you do and every decision you make has advantages and disadvantages to it. And sometimes you don't even see the advantages and disadvantages until later on. But when you make the decision, you're given with what you have to deal with, whatever you're given. But in my case, in my two Olympics, we basically had a national championships, and that were about 6 weeks to 2 months away from the Olympics. And if the Olympics were in late July, early August, like they are now, we would have held the tryouts probably in late May or something like that. So that, and it would be a 3-day tryout. Everybody is invited. They want to come, and you have to have shot in a World Cup to establish a minimum qualifying score. They did that somehow in my day, but you basically you could not be you could be anybody could be training for the Olympics and show up to the tryouts in 1972 and 76, and if you had the highest score or the second highest score of the 3-day Olympic, shot the Olympic course of fire 3 days in a row, added the scores together, and if you had the top two scores, you went to the Olympics. Now the advantage of that was that that anybody in the United States could be training for the Olympics all year long, could raise money and go to tournaments and whatever they wanted to do, and it was open to everybody. That's one way to do it, and that's the way that you did it in my two Olympics. And I think the advantages and disadvantages are that the advantage is that everybody gets a chance. That's good. That's the American way. Let's give them everybody. The disadvantage is that somebody could get hot at the tryout and really have no history of being able to handle the pressure, and you select a kind of a guy that's not really that prepared. So I've seen the USA Shooting do this. They says, okay, we're going to limit the tryouts. We're going to have a fall selection match, a spring selection match. The fall selection match, we're going to have a tournament, and only a given number of people are going to be eligible for the Olympic team. And then they fund the training for that group of people, and then you have a spring selection match where you actually narrow it down, and then you have some World Cups that they go to and things like that. And maybe this happens over a couple of years. And then finally, you have a small elite group of people that are going to be the ones that they pick the top two from. That's one way to do it. I've seen countries do it another different ways. I remember one time I heard of there was a world championship team where we had 4-person teams, and there was this one country. I thought it was kind of different. They had a tryout for 2 slots. The Olympic Committee of that country selected the third slot, and then the 4th slot was the national coach selected that one. So it didn't even have the same process in their Olympic tips. So you were in a couple Olympic trials. How did they select the team when you were at?
Well, it was closer to the Olympics, and there was a World Cup between the tryouts and the Olympics, because back then you had to have what they call an MQS, a minimum qualifying score, to compete in the Olympics, which is, I think, a good thing. You don't want someone going to the Olympics that can't do the sport somewhat competitively in that country. What most people probably don't realize is that the Olympics, the International Olympic Committee, they want multiple countries represented. They just don't want a handful of countries dominating the activity in all these sports. So they have these wild card selections. And so they'll pick a person that's in a country that probably, they're not winning the World Cups. They're getting overshadowed by the Americans or the Germans or the Chinese or the Russians, which in shooting, those are dominant countries. But you see a person that, well, wait a minute, if you take his scores, he's or she's up there. And so they'll look at other countries and they'll say, hey, well, let's give this country a wild card. And so they want to make sure that person they're given a wild card can actually shoot the score. And they want to make sure just because someone shot something in a tryout, okay, can you do it on an international stage? Now, the scores aren't close to world records. I mean, we're talking most people, anyone that's trying out that's going to make the U.S. team is going to shoot 20 points above the minimal qualifying score for the Olympics. But you have to have that. So the idea was let's go as close to the Olympics as possible, but making sure there's a World Cup there. So if someone does make it, they don't have that MQS, they can get the MQS, and then they can go to the Olympics. If they don't get the MQS at the World Cup, then you would take the alternate that already has an MQS. So that's kind of how that process worked, which in international rifle, we didn't have to worry about that because most of the guys that were making it already had it. So it didn't matter if it was the men or the women. We were pretty deep during, pretty much since the late 1950s, we've had depth. Yeah. There's been pockets where it's a little lulls. You look at some of the areas in the 80s, we weren't as good as we were in the 70s and the 60s. And then in the 90s, we got pretty good. And then, into maybe there's a little lull between then and now. But we produce really, really good shooters. So then the argument comes, do you like it where it's closer to the Olympics or further away from the Olympics? I like the idea where it's closer to the Olympic Games. I think it generates excitement. Our producer was talking about, the swimming is in their final selections process. I think they competed semifinal events, and they're picking their Olympians right now for the Olympics. It's going to be literally in a matter of weeks from now. I like that idea. You made a comment that you didn't quite like that idea, but you're right. There's pros and there's cons. And my reason is if a person's hot, why not? Let's take them and roll with it. I guess I'm more of a little bit of a gambler mentality. And if you look at things going streaks, and so if you're on a streak, let's take it. If he's shooting really good now, chances in 6 weeks, he's probably still shooting really good. If he's swimming really good, chances 6 weeks, they're going to be swimming really good. If they're running really fast, you go with that. But I think you like the opposite. You like a little more time.
Well, yeah, because it depends on where the athlete is that makes the Olympic team. In my case, I benefited from having 6 weeks to train with Jack Ryder. If you'd have held the Olympics, say within a couple of weeks after I made the Olympic team in 1972, I would not have been the shooter I was able to get the silver medal out of this thing, because I learned so much by training with him during that last 6 weeks. That it made a huge difference in me. So in that case, having some time from the time you select the Olympic team until you make the Olympic team, and there's another possibility too that I call the pendulum effect. When you make the high, you have a high in your life, and then there's a possibility for everything to the pendulum to kind of swing back towards a low. I've seen that happen in some of my clients, that they shoot a really high score at one time, and then the very next tournament they have a low score, and so you have kind of a pendulum effect, and then it may give them a little time, and then it comes back up to a high again. You can't predict that kind of stuff. And I've had PGA Tour players that I've worked with that win a tournament and go to the next tournament and they don't make the cut. I mean, I swear up and down they're doing exactly the same thing, and you say, well, what's this? So it's very difficult to say that that either one of these, there's advantages and disadvantages. But if I would, if I were shooting today, I would like to. It really wouldn't matter because honestly, the way that you have to, what the selection process is in advance, and as long as they don't change it on you at the last minute or do some kind of hanky-panky, which it really had never happened, and in my knowledge of
it would be rare. I'm sure it's happened before, but it would be a rare case. The one thing you're getting to is it doesn't matter what the selection process is, the cream usually rises to the top.
Yeah.
The best athletes typically are 95% of the time, if not more, they're going to make the team regardless what it is. You can put whatever selection out there, your best are probably going to wind up at the top anyway. But this goes into a question for you, is you've coached a lot of people that were on Olympic programs for the first time.
Yeah.
So if someone's on the Olympics for the first time, the question is, okay, how do you prepare for the Olympics? It's a little different than if you're going again, and you can use that experience. So let's talk a little bit about how do you prepare if you only have 4 to 8 weeks versus I've got a few months. So I'm talking about a 4 to 6 week period versus a few months. How do you prepare an athlete for that? And give an example if you have one, because I'm sure it's interesting.
I do have an example. I ran the International Shooting School for a while, for probably a dozen years or so. And I had an athlete there from a country that was Olympic quality. He had made a couple of Olympic teams, or at least he'd made one Olympic team prior to it's time for his country to select him, and he was training at my facility at the time, and he was shooting really, really well. I would say scores that could medal in the Olympics. And if he'd stayed at my school, it would have been okay. But his country decided that they selected the national coach for his country. And they made a decision, because the Olympics were going to be held in their country that year, that they would have all of their athletes train on the Olympic facility for 6 weeks prior to the tournament, thinking that, if you're training on the Olympic range, you're going to know the range better than people that come in and only get a couple of days of practice. So we have a chance to win the Olympics. So he had to go home to his country and couldn't train at my place. And his coach was a military guy. And his idea of getting high scores was let's run up and down the mountains in the morning before you practice, and let's practice 8 days a week, 26 hours a day, and all that kind of stuff. And by the time I got to the Olympics at that and saw this my student, he was wiped out. He was so done that he had no chance. He even talked to me about just quitting, and that would have been a shame if he had done that, because 2 years later he wins the World Shooting Championships, the first person from his country ever to do that, and then 2 years later he wins the Olympic gold medal. So, but there's a right and wrong way to train. Right before the Olympics, and there's a couple of principles here that it doesn't matter about the Olympics, because I don't know how many people that are watching this are actually in training for the Olympics are likely to be, but everybody has an event that is important to them that they need to train for, and I think that there are a couple of things that would work for anyone getting ready for any trial that we probably ought to visit about. And One is there are some things not to do, and there's some things not to do. So let's talk about a couple of those. First of all, it's probably not a good idea for you to change something right before your event. It's if you want to make some changes, we teach a system of segmented training, whereas you've got from the time that you start training for an event until the event occurs, whether you've got 2 weeks to do it or 2 months to do it, whatever it is, that you segment your training into 3 segments. The first segment we call evaluation, where if you want to tweak something, if you want to change something, you probably are safe to do that. And then the second segment we call conditioning, where you are working intensity. You increase the intensity of your training so that you're trying to master what you've chosen in the first segment. And then the last segment is the segment right before the competition. And you're not going to train hard, and you're not going to try anything new. You're going to polish what you've chosen and what you've mastered, and getting ready for the tournament. Those are practical things that tend to work for everybody all the time.
Yeah, so what are some of the things that you would do differently if you have a lot more time versus little time? If you're closer to the Olympic trials, I think polishing is probably something you should be doing, and as a coach, we're maintaining that. We're keeping the athlete from training too hard several weeks before the games, and we're trying to make sure that they're just maintaining what they're doing, so that when they go there, they're fresh, they're ready, and they're on point. But what if I have several months? Let's say I got 6 months before the games. Do you incorporate that a little differently?
Well, the one thing that happens is that there are certain big tournaments in a quadrennial. I mean, if you most people who are going to the Olympics, if they're smart and can do it and they have the opportunity to do it, they're probably planning for the Olympics at least 4 years out, if not 8 years out. I mean, I've got students that I'm working with right now that are planning for the Olympics after this, the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. They're getting ready, starting to plan, or they have already planned this out. So you have to. It just determines when you want to talk about it. If you want to pick a period that let's start with the year before the Olympics. You have been planning things out. Maybe the first thing is to find out what does it take to make the Olympic team. I mean, first of all, in international rifle shooting, you've got to make the national team. That's the first thing you got to do. And how does that work?
Well, hopefully you would know that 2 to 3 years before.
Yeah.
Because if you're not on the U.S. team, you're not going to World Cups. If you're not going to World Cups, you're not getting that international experience you need when you go to something like the Olympic Games. And so hopefully they would know that by then.
Well, and not only that, but now they've got the world ranking. They put the world ranking in the selection process. That's what you just had. Bryson DeChambeau just won the U.S. Open, mm-hmm. and he can't go to the Olympics for the United States because his world ranking. He didn't get to count the world ranking for his live events, and that's what kept him from making the Olympic team.
Yeah, we can get a talk about how one sport picks a team.
Yeah.
Picks a team from another sport. It's quite different. But you mentioned something that I think a lot of viewers don't realize, that every sport has an international committee. You
Yep.
have the International Olympic Committee that oversees all sports, but then within the sports, like ours is the International Shooting Sports Federation,
Right.
and they oversee rifle, shotgun, pistol. But then you have wrestling would have their own, and
Right.
the other sports would have their own. Archery has their own, and then within that, the countries choose their selection process, and it varies between one country to the other and how they do that. But no matter what you do, if you make the team, no matter how much time, you need to have an idea in advance on how I'm going to prepare when I get to the games. And if you don't have that idea a year out, that's probably not going to bode well for you.
There's a difference between preparing for the Olympics and preparing for, say, the World Championships or National Championships or any lesser competition, because at least for the United States athletes, the only competition that's like the Olympics in our 4-year period is the Pan American Games, because unlike the other tournaments, you have in the Pan American Games, you have all of the sports training and competing at the same location, just like the Olympics, or at least in the same country. I mean, you've got the Olympics, and it's going to be in Paris, or the Pan American Games could be some other country, but you're normally, at least when I was competing, we had an Olympic Village where you're in the village for probably 2 weeks before the Olympics starts. You get to meet other athletes. You can go to other. I really enjoyed going to other athletes, watching them train, watching them get ready for the games, and you're on the inside. It's one of the big advantages of making an Olympic team. You get to stay at the Olympic Village, and you get to know the other athletes, and it was one of the brightest moments of my life to be able to get to meet other athletes, not just the shooters, but other go to watch training. But it's a different experience. First of all, there's a lot of media at the Olympics, interviews and things like that. And it's a different world, and I think that elite performers who have been to the Olympics can help prepare. Our coaches could use their experiences of the people that have made the Olympic team to be able to prepare them for what it's like to go to the Olympics. And what are the differences? First of all, you're not going to be able to train every day. There's not enough facility points for you to go in and train like you would train for a national championships or something like that. You're probably going to be there for a couple of weeks and have very little training right before tournaments, unless you can find an alternative range to train on, and which we did that a couple of times, where you could do that. So there's differences because of the fact that it's a different experience. But as far as the competition itself is concerned, other than having, if you're in a sport that doesn't have spectators like international rifle, there are very few tournaments that have the spectators that they have at the Olympics. And it's gotten easier, I think, for the rifle shooters over the years when you have a finals event. Now you have a finals event, and there's always a lot of spectators in the finals event. And so people get used to the finals, and I think it's made it easier for us.
Yeah, on the internet, you can watch any sport. So if you're curious as far as what sport we were in, you're going to be able to go online. You're going to be able to go to a website, look up shooting, look at the schedule, and they're going to air that online for all sports, so you can get to see the finals and all the shooting sports online. Some might be televised. I know shotgun gets a lot of activity. I would imagine that shotgun would get more attention because Paris is pretty much in a hotbed of shotgun shooting.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to get a lot of attention. And we have a really good skeet team this year going into the Olympics.
Well, we've probably got the strongest skeet team I've ever seen. We've got an a 3-time Olympic gold medalist for the men, Vincent Hancock. One of my students, Austin Smith, is her second Olympics, and it's a strong team, and the one of the things that's different today than was in my day is that they will make the replays available. So if you don't want to get up early in the morning to watch the finals for an event, you can watch the replay on tape just by going to the website, and every final is taped by the IOC, and so you have all of the finals and all of the sports are available for you to watch. So if you're interested in watching something like I am, I'll probably watch the skeet and the archery finals. If my clients are in there, I'm going to get up early in the morning and watch them. But actually, you've got three students you've worked with in the archery finals or the archery team this year. Mackenzie Brown and who else do you have? You have
we have Kaufhold. She's probably one of the
Casey
top shooters.
Kaufhold.
She's probably a good one to medal in the individual.
Yeah, and both of us
have
worked
team.
with Brady Ellison, who's the current world champion.
Yeah, and he's going to probably go until he can't pull the bow back anymore.
Yeah, I don't know how many Olympics he's been in.
I think he's on his 5th one, I think.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, 5th one. And that's the beautiful thing about shooting sports, whether it's archery, rifle, you have some longevity there. Skeet, Kim Rhodey and Vinnie Hancock been shooting for a long time. And so you can get people in their 30s and 40s, even close to 50 that are still very competitive, where most sports, man, if you're past 34, you're pretty much past your opportunity in a lot of sports, where in the shooting sports community we're not. So if you like this information, you like this content, give us a thumbs up, share this with other people, and let us know what you think about. Should we have more time or less time to pick a team? It doesn't matter with the sport. Leave that information in the comments, and we'll see you next time.